Ryan Noble's standing by right now from CNN. Good morning, Ryan. Boy, so quiet, not much going on. Should we talk even? Is it worth it? I mean, what do you think?
I mean, there's probably a couple of topics that we could I mean, have we started talking about Boilermaker preps for next year? If we run out of anything else, we can talk about that.
Yeah, what does KTV call theirs? It's the Go the Distance.
Go the Distance, yes.
We could get started.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
We can get going on that.
All right, let's start with, because I want your take, obviously, on Bob Woodward, but we just came off that I played the whole 11 minutes of that conversation. Isn't that the most intriguing conversation you've ever heard?
It is intriguing. I think that's a really interesting look behind the scenes of what it's like to be around Donald Trump. I think that there's probably conversations that happen like that quite frequently.
Yeah.
It reminded me a lot of the Omarosa conversation where he seems to be completely oblivious to the things that are going around him.
Yeah.
And the Woodward conversation falls right in line with that.
And a lot of them are afraid. We'll get into that. But that's the president saying, well, a lot of them are afraid to come to me, which is interesting all in itself. We could do a whole topic on that. But let's start with the hearings yesterday. The Democrats trying to, I don't know, is this for their base? Is this to show some sort of relevance? I mean, are they trying to convince just a couple of Republicans to jump ship? What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's all of the above, Bill. Probably the broader strategy is to put on a show for the midterm elections. You know, they want to continue to reinforce this idea to independent voters in particular that the Trump administration is bad, that Republicans are keeping them from participating in the process, and that they want a seat back at the table. And I think this whole document issue with Brett Kavanaugh, I'm not saying it's not an issue, but I think they've manufactured it to the point where it's much bigger than what they're making it out to be. The simple fact of the matter is, there are hundreds and thousands of documents from his time in the Bush administration that are relevant, that might be interesting to these members of the Senate to help them form their decision. But the most interesting thing about Brett Kavanaugh is his lengthy career as an actual federal judge, where he's made decisions and written opinions. That's probably the most relevant look into his potential as a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah.
And to your broader point, the simple fact of the matter is they can look at every single one of those documents, and the Democrats can be as upset as they want about what they find in them. It's likely not going to change the mind of any Republicans because they have the votes. Elections have consequences. The president, Donald Trump, won the election. He has the right to pick who he wants, and he's got enough votes in the Senate to get the guy confirmed. So this is really the only option Democrats have to kind of put on a show.
I got to give Kavanaugh one bit of credit. I have never seen anyone able to be so stone cold without emotion, without reaction, and without blinking as Brett Kavanaugh. It's really quite incredible to watch this.
And you think that maybe that looks easy on television? That's not easy.
I can't imagine it is.
I think of the Peter Strzok hearing, if you remember that, where that guy could not, anything anybody said, he had a facial guttural reaction to.
Yeah.
I mean, the average American's response is to have a reaction. And the idea that Kavanaugh could just sit there stone-faced where people were yelling back and forth about him for hours is absolutely remarkable.
I want to play a little audio, and then I have a question for you.
Welcome, everyone, to this confirmation hearing.
By the way, Chuck Grassley would make an awesome stand-up comedian, don't you think? He'd be like a Stephen Wright type, maybe.
Deadpan.
Negative, Debbie Downer. Anyway, listen.
On the nomination of
Mr. Chairman.
Brett Kavanaugh.
Mr. Chairman.
To serve as Associate Justice.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to be recognized for a question
now
before we proceed. The committee received just last night, less than 15 hours ago, 42,000 pages of documents that...
I can't listen to it anymore with the interruptions. But that was 10 seconds in. This is not common in the Senate, is it?
No, this never happens, particularly at the committee level.
Yeah.
Usually at the committee level, this group of people have worked together on a number of different issues. I mean, this particular body has confirmed hundreds and hundreds of judges at every level of the federal government, and for the most part, without a ton of acrimony. There have been little dust-ups here and there with particularly hot-button judicial nominees, but, I mean, Kavanaugh is, he's definitely a conservative. There's no doubt about that, so Democrats are not necessarily going to be happy with him, but he's by no means some sort of flame-throwing radical that's going to completely upend the court. And And so the idea that they would kind of stage this whole thing, and don't make no mistake about this, this wasn't organic by any stretch of the imagination. This was led by Chuck Schumer. They had a conference call with members of the Judiciary Committee. They had a whole plan, which senator was going to talk when to try and interrupt the process. This was all designed to sow doubt in the minds of voters ahead of the midterms. And at the end of the day, it's not going to keep Brett Kavanaugh from being a Supreme Court justice.
Yeah. And a lot of these this paperwork, and by the way, the percentages. One of the things that Grassley did yesterday was talk about the percentages that you're making up numbers because the 6%. We've only seen 6% of the documents. Well, that's not true. But a lot of this stuff would never get through because these were communications between the president, George Bush, and others. That stuff never would get through. Right?
Right. But the one thing that is interesting about all of this is that George W. Bush, who was the president at the time, lifted any sort of executive privilege that he might still own as it relates to those documents. The administration that's holding it back is the current administration.
Okay.
Now the executive privilege kind of carries over from administration to administration, so they do have a degree of ability here. But this has always been the problem with the Trump administration. And I think it tracks back to this as well. Now, I think it's very unlikely that within those 100,000 documents, there's anything in there that's going to make someone say, well, especially a Republican senator say, I'm not going to vote for Brett Kavanaugh. But where Democrats are successful in this is, the question is, well, if there isn't anything in there that we would worry about, then why can't we just see them?
Yeah.
And this is a pattern with the Trump administration. They would prefer to keep things behind closed doors and secret as opposed to exposing them to the light of day and potentially create a controversy. And so that's why I think that the Democrats realize that they've got something here, that if there's a reason that you're not going to let these documents out, that makes us think that there's something wrong.
Yeah.
And it actually almost works better for them if the Trump administration continues to hold back the documents because it allows them to kind of sow this conspiracy theory. And, I don't understand why all the documents can't be released, but they've got a reason. At the end of the day, again, I don't think it matters much as to whether or not it gets confirmed.
All right, switch gears. Who gets the Bob Woodward interview? I'm assuming that 60 Minutes is coming back from their summer break. There's the Sunday morning shows. Any word yet? Because it's coming.
I haven't heard, but I think in the past he's had a relationship with ABC. I don't know if I might be thinking. I might not be recalling that correctly. So he might already have a relationship with the network where he talks to him first. It'll be interesting to see how he handles this in particular. His career has been so distinguished. He's never really been questioned.
Yeah.
He's written, a book about almost every administration that have always been relatively critical. This one takes it to a new level, but he's receiving backlash this time around that he's never experienced. I'm sure he knew it was coming. And it seems as though he's done his due diligence in preparing his sources and having a paper trail.
Don't you think he's been trained? And he really references that in the phone conversation. It's this attack on this difficult place we are in my business, talking about the media.
Yeah.
I think that he alludes to the fact that he has a source and a recording and proof and documents and vivid testimony that's recorded, by the way, for every point that's made in the book. I would be careful about protesting this too aggressively and questioning his credibility for fear that he'll just release more audio.
Well, here's the thing. Ari Fleischer, who's the press secretary under George W. Bush, and is a pretty consistent Trump supporter across the board.
Yep.
He tweeted yesterday, you can say what you want about these other people that have written books about Donald Trump, but Bob Woodward's track record is impeccable and can't be questioned. And Woodward wrote a pretty critical book about the time that George W. Bush was in office when Ari Fleischer was working there. So this is somebody that's been through this gauntlet before. And here's the thing. This guy, over the course of his career, has been proven right way more than he's been proven wrong.
Yeah.
So, I think you could probably take to the bank this book. And I think what the big problem that Trump supporters can't seem to grasp is that this isn't some rogue journalist who's out on a witch hunt to destroy the president of the United States. This cancer for Donald Trump comes from within his own shop.
Yeah.
The people that are telling Bob Woodward these stories are people that were appointed by Donald Trump and currently work for Donald Trump. These sources are littered throughout his administration. Journalists aren't making these stories up. Someone is telling them. And even if those people are making the stories up, they're people that work for Donald Trump. So if you're a Trump supporter, you have to ask yourself, where's the problem here? Well, there's three potential possibilities, right? It's either that the president is this bad, which is a distinct possibility. The second thing is that if he's not that bad, at least the people around him are so unenamored with him that they're doing everything they possibly can to destroy him. Or the third option is that a journalist is completely making it up.
Yeah.
I don't think there's any chance the journalist is making it up, so you're left with the two other scenarios, and neither of them are good for Donald Trump. And that's something that I think a lot of people that support President Trump can't seem to grasp. They can't seem to understand that.
Well, the new strategy here is saying this was all about the midterms, that Woodward is out trying to affect the midterms.
Well, he's not out. I mean, there's no doubt that the timing of the book was purposeful, connected to the midterms, but that's probably more of a book-selling strategy, right?
Yeah. You're right.
Everybody's paying attention to it right now, so this is a good time to drop the book. So, I mean, that doesn't change the facts that are contained within the book.
Yeah.
And there's a chance it could impact the midterms, especially in some of these swing districts like the one that you're currently residing in, where people are trying to say, you know, I might support the president broadly or I support his policies, but when I see the way he's running this operation, maybe I don't want to continue to empower him with a Republican Congress. I don't think there's any doubt it changes that. But, again, you can – and this is what the president always does, tries to distract and murky the water up and say, well, this is only because of the election. Well, that doesn't change the facts at hand.
Right.
The fact that an election is coming up doesn't change those facts. And so that's what he needs to answer for, and that's what he never seems to do.
This was a good argument for Omarosa. It was a good argument for Wolf. Not such a good argument with Bob Woodward. Ryan Nobles, as always, we appreciate it. We'll do it again next week.
Thanks, guys. Have a great day.
Thanks so much.